The trick in seduction, of male or female seduction, is when you're not there, the other person is thinking about you. That is when you've succeeded. That is the game that you're trying to play. Because when you're there, they're seeing you and things are going on, they're thinking about you. But when you're absent and they're thinking about you, then you've gotten under their skin. If you're not there and they're not thinking about you, then your seduction isn't working, right? So the whole point is to create a fantasy in which they're going, One of the things I talk about is creating mixed signals. Like, people seem to be good, but they also show a little bit of an evil sign. And so the woman is thinking, who is this man? Do I really know him? What is he really about? I'm intrigued. And he's sort of touched on certain fantasy and points, and her imagination now takes over. She starts thinking about him. She starts imagining him as if he could be playing one of these great archetypes of the male seducer, right? He could be the rescuer. He could be the hero. And so because she has an imagination, a vivid imagination, she's enveloping him in all of these fantasies from her point of view. And so if the male seducer knows how to feed a little bit her imagination so that when he's not there, she starts enveloping him in this. There's the great writer Stendhal, the French writer who wrote a book on love. He compared it to these limbs of trees that have been dropped into this mine, this crystal mine in Germany. And when they pull them out, they're full of crystals. And he calls falling in love this crystallization method, where in your mind, crystals are forming, where you're imagining this person is fantastic and has all these fantasy elements. Well, if the woman has no imagination, is so matter of fact and so businesslike, you could do all of the tactics in the art of seduction, and she won't be thinking about you. She won't be enveloping you in these fantasies.
What's interesting then in that imagination, I wonder if it's even worse in today's society, because you've got social media. People look online before they go on a date and they see photos of somebody, and then they have this whole imagination of what that person looks like. If that person then that's got this wild imagination where they see, let's say, a guy with a dog, and they're like, oh my God, he loves dogs. We're going to come together. We're going to have this dog family. Like, he's my person. And that whole idea of the imagination before you've even gone on the date is even more dangerous now.
Probably. You're talking to somebody a little bit older. I mean, a lot older. But so I'm back in the day where I had to go to a bar, or I had to go, actually had the cojones to go pick up a woman, right? I didn't have all this crap. So yeah, if you're a male seducer, you know how to create that fantasy by having a picture of holding a little cat. Oh, he's so sensitive and wonderful, or a dog, and creating this kind of image that's going to feed women's imagination. She's hooked. He's got the little hook in her. You can take her wherever he wants. So using that and being very clever with how you present yourself with the image and the words that go with it, you can feed that imagination factor.
Yeah. Okay, so what I've done is I've actually pulled out, so you have a seduction process in your book, and I've pulled out some of the ones that I just find utterly fascinating that I would love to really talk about.
Right.
So number 2, actually, I only got to number 2.
You've got 24 to go.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was going to go through all of them, Robert, and I was like, if only I could keep you here for multiple hours, I would, because I adore you so much. But what we've done is I've just pulled out like the ones that I think my audience would really find powerful. So you got number 2, which is create a false sense of security.
So when a man's trying to seduce a woman, there's a wariness. Women have much more to lose in a seduction than the man, right? Men, they'll sleep with anybody practically, right? We all know that. A woman has much more to lose in that process. So women are wary, right? And so you have to overcome their wariness. You have to create some trust. And if you're an honest seducer, you're creating honest trust. But if you're a dishonest seducer, you're creating a false sense of trust. And one of the strategies that I talk about is you become their friend. And when you're their friend, and this is a longer seduction, it still takes several months because you can't do it in a couple of days. When you become their friend, you don't seem so threatening. The trust element comes into play, right? You see them as someone who genuinely likes, for a man who wants to be their friend. Well, on one hand, it might be insulting that he doesn't see me as attractive. But on the other hand, he wants to be my friend, and it's very kind of flattering. Well, you get that friendship going, and then you inject something else. You start bringing in some of that sexual element, some of that erotic element. And the trust element that has been established makes it very difficult for the woman. She becomes very confused. And because she's been emotionally connected as a friend, it's like a bridge to creating a connection sexually. So starting off by lowering their wariness of you, their suspicion, by trying to be their friend means, oh, he's not just interested in sex, but he might be just interested in sex, but he's using this tactic to kind of lower your suspicions about him.
I hate to say that it's genius, but it's actually genius. As a woman, as you're talking, I'm literally thinking to myself, yeah, you would trust him. Because in all honesty, Robert, if I went out, let's say I wasn't married, and I went out with a guy, and I was like, I'm not sure if it's a day, it's a group of us. As a woman, you absolutely have one eye open the whole time. You're like, is he going to make a move? Like, you're just aware of that constantly. If he doesn't then make a move, a week later, 2 weeks later, and he's genuinely asking me about my family.
Yeah.
Like, I actually completely understand why, as a woman, you were like, wow, he actually likes me.
Yeah.
Me for me, not me as a potential object, not me as a one-night stand.
Right.
And then that does allow you to lower your guard.
Yeah. The way to see through that tactic is this attempted friendship genuine or not? And that's a tricky question, right? But that opens up the whole thing about being much more sensitive to the nonverbal cues that you pick up from a person. Because what often happens with women is that they sense something is wrong with a man from the first time they meet him. But then they drop the suspicion very quickly. They think, oh, he's not so bad, or I had it all wrong. But actually that first instinct was very right. So you have to trust your instincts, and you have to trust that this person that is trying to become your friend, they're giving off signs that there's something kind of cold about it. It doesn't feel genuine, right? It feels like a tactic. And we can get into that later because
I would love to, actually, if you don't mind just giving us a few now.
So one thing that a man will do if he's using this kind of tactic is he's in a bit of a hurry, right? Because, Jesus Christ, I don't have 6 months to become friends with this woman. I want to sleep with her tomorrow, right? So he's in a bit of a hurry. So his effort to be a friend is kind of rushed. He really likes you, right? But he's texting you, he's talking about you, asking you questions and all these other things. But it's all it seems kind of rushed. In a period of like a week or so, he's suddenly your friend now. That is a sure sign that something else is going on. Because if you genuinely want to be a friend of someone, you're willing to take your time, right? So the calculating seducer is probably after sex fairly quickly, right? Or an abusive relationship. So they're not willing to take their time in that area. But also, as I said, people who are narcissists, and that's a pretty broad category, but a big category of the cold male seducer, you can kind of pick up the signs in there. So they're asking you questions, but they don't seem genuinely interested. There's a kind of coldness in their eyes. I say the classic nonverbal cue of a narcissist is there's a disconnect between their eyes and their mouth. So they smile. Oh, yes, that's so interesting, Lisa. Yeah. But the eyes are dead. Their eyes are not. When someone's genuinely interested, the whole face lights up. You can't fake that. But what you can fake is a kind of a smile, but the eyes reveal. So there are signs that the narcissist isn't really emotionally involved. But the problem with a lot of women in this situation is they're not attentive. They're thinking about themselves. They're projecting onto the man images from their childhood, their father figures, previous men who've hurt them. They're not in the moment. They're not reading the fine-grained, nonverbal cues that the other person is getting. They're thinking about their problems, their history, their fantasies. But you have to you have to be in the moment. You have to look at them and see if that interest that they're showing to be your friend is actually genuine or not. And the face will often reveal that.
Ah, that's so good. One thing I'd like to add, as a woman though, also, as an adult woman, I feel like I have neglected and ignored my gut intuition.
Sure.
And so I think a big part of it is we have the gut intuition. We've been told our whole lives, or we feel like we've ignored it. We've told not to trust it. And so now I think it actually is useful to start to learn and trust your gut intuition again, so that when that sort of thing happens, you don't go, well, it must be I must be crazy, just believe what they say. You actually listen to it and you're like, what is it that my body or my mind is trying to tell me? And if it's, I don't trust this person, then the next question is why? And I love you being able to give that tactic of look at their eyes and look at their mouth. And if there feels like there's something out of alignment, notice it and trust it. I think that's really powerful.
Well, in the past, before the internet, when people were more social, and women were a little bit warier than they are now about men, right? Because becoming pregnant outside of marriage was a huge deal. They had that instinct, and it was very, very strong. A woman could pick up the signals of a cold seducer pretty quickly, but that skill has been degraded in the modern era, right? And so when you're spending so much of your time on your phone and you're judging people, they're the virtual thing, you're losing the sense of how to look at somebody in the moment and feel. And it's not just this thing I told you about the eyes. Some of it I can't even communicate in words. It's that gut feeling that something isn't right about this person. Something is disconnected. I can't say exactly what it is, but it's giving me a feeling that he is not who he pretends to be. There's a fine line between that and paranoia, where you're doing that to every man. Because if you become like that, then you can never have a good relationship. You can never let down your guard. So that you can go too far with that. But you should have, in the initial stages of a relationship, a woman should have a little bit of suspicion, a little bit of wariness. That has to come down. He has to earn your trust. It can't just be this instant thing that happens.
Oh God, I love the earning, the trusting. I think that's super important versus just give your trust over. One thing I started to do was really start to learn my own intuition and almost train it and think of it like a skill set, because I've been ignoring it for so long and it keeps showing up, and it's like I need to start listening to it. So instead of just taking it for fact, what I started to do is every time I had the gut intuition, I would write it down.
Can you give me an example of some?
Yes. Somebody gave me some signals where I'm like, I don't know if I can trust that person. There's something, and I don't know what, because on paper, if it was a script, it would read very normal. People would be like, there's nothing wrong. But there were certain things that they said that made me think they weren't trustworthy and that they were a flake. I had zero proof, and every time I tried to articulate it, I was like, I think I'm just imagining it, but it feels real. And within a month, of course, it completely played out the way that my gut had anticipated, and they were proven to not be trustworthy. Yeah. So that allowed me to encourage myself to listen to nonverbal cues more.
That's right. It's very important. Yeah.
All right, I want to go on to the next one now.
We're on number 3.
So number 3, it is number 3. Oh. I was like, I gotta reduce it. They're just so good, Robert. Okay. They're so good. You mentioned this earlier, but you said mixed signals. So talk to me about mixed signals.
Well, it's a very powerful seduction technique. It preys on a very elemental part of human psychology. It's something that I don't think people are so good at anymore. But the example I give in the book is of this woman who was a fantastic seductress in the beginning of the 19th century. I believe it's Madame Recamier. She was so angelic. She was just so pure and so chaste. She played the harp. You know what? That's the instrument that angels play, right? There would be salons where she would be playing the harp and there would be other musicians there. And she was very beautiful, and the men would going crazy about her. But then what she would do is she'd be playing the harp, and then she would shoot this man a look that said something else, something a little bit sexual, something a little bit naughty. But then it was gone and she was playing the harp again. And he'd be going, what the hell was that? Did I just pick up some kind of interest in me that was physical? But then she went back. She's so angelic. She's so unlike that, right? What is it? Well, that triggers the fantasy element, right? The person is a puzzle. And the problem today, and people are so obvious. They're so goddamn obvious. They're on the internet. They're saying, here's what I have for breakfast. Here's what I love. I'm just opening myself up and this is who I am, right? But seduction involves a little bit of mystery, a little bit of fantasy. It's not like everyday life. It's not like things on Instagram. It's something different. It's theater. That's what's exciting about it, okay? So if you're the male seducer, he will be someone who seems very trustworthy, very honest, very solid. He got an MBA. He's working for Goldman Sachs. But then he reveals something a little bit rock and roll, a little bit rebellious, a little bit like he takes something else about him that doesn't quite click. Wow, I didn't know who this guy is. Maybe he's more interesting than I thought. Maybe he's not so buttoned up and so controlled as I thought. There's another aspect to him. The element of surprise that you don't know who someone is what fascinates us about a movie. When you create a character and suddenly on screen they reveal a trait that seems out of character. Wow, that's exciting. That's what makes you, that's how movies work, right? It's the same thing in real life. You create a sense of, you don't know who I am, but it has to be subtle. It's not like you're not Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You're not half evil and half button-down banker. You're 95% banker and you're 2 or 3 or 4% of this other thing. It's a little peak of something else that intrigues, that creates a fantasy element, okay? Now, how a woman could sense that that is a tactic, it comes back down to that nonverbal element. Or the other thing is analyze what it is that's intriguing you, what it is that's making you think about the person. So from the woman's point of view, the ability to stand back and analyze the situation instead of getting immediately rushing in emotionally is probably the best thing overall for the whole thing that we're talking about today.
Okay, so number 5. See, I ditched number 4. We got create a need. So you put stir anxiety and discontent.
Well, that's one of the more evil tactics. I don't deny that. I hate to say it because I'm not really into the whole, I'm certainly not into the pickup artist scene, right? And people have associated my book with that. Because I want my book to be something a little more elevated than that. But in the pickup artist world, they have the thing called negging, which is what negging, negative, where you tell the woman something negative about them. Well, that creates a kind of a wound in them that gives you now room to now your next step is sort of kind and interested in them, but they're feeling like they want to kind of satisfy what you were criticizing. So creating a wound, creating a need for you is what a classic seducer will do. So you're pinpointing a vulnerability that they have, something that's missing in their life, and you're going to be the one that provides it. So if you actually create the need in them by something you say, and then you're the one to satisfy it, it's a very, very potent seduction technique. Now, the thing that happened with the game and the pickup artist scene in Los Angeles is that so many men were using these tactics, were using that negging tactic, that the moment a woman heard that, she knew this guy's a pickup artist, and they weren't interested in it. So it stopped working after a while. But if you see a man doing that, if he's like kind of criticizing you in a subtle way, but then it's covered up by other things going on, maybe feel like that was a tactic, that wasn't genuine, that he was doing that to kind of make me feel insecure, because an insecure person is more vulnerable to being seduced than a totally secure person.
Yeah. The problem is when you're insecure, if they touch on your insecurity in that moment, I don't think you think they're trying to touch on my insecurity. You almost think, ouch, that really hurt. God, I knew I was bad at that. See, I told you so. And it almost reconfirms what you're thinking instead of highlights that they're trying to seduce you.
That's very true.
Coming up.
A seduction is you're taking somebody out of that world and you're taking them into something different, heightened, more dramatic, more interesting, more theatrical.
All right, guys, we're going to get right back to the conversation with the amazing Robert Greene. But first, I want to talk directly to the badass content creators watching right freaking now. When you pour time and love and energy into the content you're creating, just like I do, you know that creating short clips for social is actually important to help people come and watch your message and your show. But it also is actually freaking tedious and time consuming. So that's why I think you're going to freaking love Opus Clips. Now, Opus Clips makes it so damn simple to convert your long form videos into short, social media ready clips automatically using AI. We use Opus Clips right here on Women of Impact and Impact Theory, and every single person absolutely loves how it works so damn well to be able to clip emotional and powerful moments from these episodes that you watch to then share on social. So trust me, my homie, just go and give Clip Anything by Opus Clip a try for yourself and see how easy it is to use. Now, you can actually go and try it for the next few weeks for absolutely free when you click the link in the show notes. Guys, that was absolutely free, so you have no fear of loss. Go check it out, and if you love it, use it, and if you don't use it. But I have a feeling you're gonna love it. All right, now back to the episode.
Which is why sometimes you have to be able to withdraw from your emotional responses and analyze what's going on. Now, I talk about this in all of my books. We're emotional animals. We're not rational creatures, despite what we might think. So in the moment, you're always going to be emotionally involved. You can be upset, but also you want to show the other person that they're wrong about the insecurity they created, which is a seduction technique. So in the moment, as you say, you're feeling that, and there's no way you're going to get over it. It's going to embroil you in a thought process that's going to make you even more insecure. What you need to do is the next day, you need to look back at what happened and think about it and analyze it when they're not in your presence and go, what really went on? So that would be a tactic I would really, really emphasize. On a first date particularly, the next day, mentally review what they did and what they said and think about whether it seemed like it was genuine or natural, or if there might have been some kind of manipulative game going on. And kind of analyze it a little bit, because it's hard to do that in the moment.
Do you find that it's harder to even do that when you're the closer you are to the person? So on the first day, I think it may be a little easier to disconnect yourself, to be like,
sure,
hang on a minute, that was a little rude. Versus if you're doing it, let's say, to a parent or a sibling, where you're like, that was really offensive. Do you think it's harder? And then if so, are there any tactics that you have seen or used where it's like, even if you care about them and you love them, like if it was my husband or your wife, how do we still look at that without emotion and still be able to identify that maybe it was a tactic?
Well, it's not always a tactic. I mean, I've known situations where a parent will make a comment about a woman's weight, a kind of a bitchy comment. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the person doing that has some kind of nefarious thing involved. They just don't know how to control their mouth. They're being passive aggressive in some way, right? And as you say, if it's like a parent or somebody you've been involved with for several years, it's much, much harder to take that distance. But it's very important. Now, I know people in my life who know how to trigger me like that and say something like that. And I do get upset, even though I've written all the books about not getting upset, because I can't bloody well help it, right? And then I might react and do something that I kind of regret, and then I analyze it, and then I go, what went on here in this situation, and I unspool it. Now, it's easy for me to say that because I've been doing this for years. It's why I write books. I understand that having a distance when a parent says a comment that's kind of biting or cruel, it's very hard to the next day to think about that and see. But in general, I try to promote this philosophy that what people do to you is not personal. Now, people have a very hard time with that, going, well, what do you mean it's not personal, Robert? Well, what I mean by that is when somebody says something malicious or cruel or bitchy, they're not really aiming it at you. They're having problems from their own past. They're aiming it at their parent. They're aiming it at a sibling. They're aiming it at a previous boyfriend or girlfriend. They're aiming it at a colleague that at work that did something to them. It really isn't personal about you in particular. It's about them and their problems. So if you take the angle that I'm not going to get emotionally involved with this because it really has nothing to do with me, that is an incredibly liberating thing to develop. I'm not saying it's easy, but that should be like the end game of a lot of our kind of self-help.
I tried to do that recently, actually, and it really worked. So I got a very negative comment in my YouTube channel.
Oh dear. What do you mean you read your YouTube comments?
Yeah, I do. I read my... Guys, at home, I read your comments. I really do. Because here's the thing.
But they're cruel, they're mean, they're awful.
Actually, not in my community. They're amazing.
On YouTube?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Wild Wild West.
I know.
Okay.
But like, because this community is women who actually want to do better, like we all really support, I'm not to say we don't have those negative Nancys, but we've got this community where everyone wants to uplift each other. Now, every so often though, I do get a negative comment. Sure. And so it's usually when a video goes viral, unfortunately, but I got this negative comment and it was so rude. It was so dismissive. It was so insulting. And I just paused. First of all, I thought, what has happened to that person in their life? They don't know me. So what has happened where they've had such a visceral negative emotion towards me? I went back to what happened in their past. What was it that I've done that potentially triggered them to make them think of their past? And then instead of fighting, like I've definitely got a strong backbone, I just met them with grace. And I said, if you just took that minute that you just wrote this negative comment and told someone in your life how much you love them, how good they're doing, could you imagine what kind of world we would live in? And so that's kind of my new approach of that. It's not personal. Greet them with grace. Right. And then the final thing is, I don't think men get this as much as women, but the second as a woman you get emotional, all of a sudden you get dismissed.
Yeah.
If you have an emotional response to something, even if it's a rightful emotional response to a negative comment, if you get your back up, it's just, you're seen as like now defensive, a bitch. And so that was like kind of my new strategy of just...
I think that's very smart. That's very smart.
I'm going to go to the next point
now.
Sure,
please.
All right. You somewhat covered this of number 9, which is keep them in suspense when you don't have any idea what's coming next.
So a seduction is like a story that you're telling, right? So what interests us about a story is, I don't know what's going to happen next. Therefore, I've got to turn the page. I'm watching this movie. I don't know what's going to happen to this character. All right, I'm going to keep watching it, right? So a seduction operates on that same dynamic. The person doesn't know where you're going to take them on the next date. They don't know maybe how you're going to appear, what you're going to wear, but the surprises are positive. They're interesting. They're exciting. There's gifts involved. There's places you're taking them to, but it's not predictable. It's unfamiliar. It's theater. Because let's face it, for most of us, our day-to-day lives are rather banal and rather boring. I can say that my life is very boring. I just sit in my office writing all day, right? But for us also in this world, for men in the 18th century, they were going on ships, they were crossing the ocean, they were killing people with swords, they were battling, they're going off to war. It was adventure, it was excitement. Now they're sitting in cubicles and they're typing all day. We're leading these boring, banal lives. Everything is familiar, everything is predictable. A seduction is you're taking somebody out of that world and you're taking them into something different, heightened, more dramatic, more interesting, more theatrical. Okay? So that means you're creating surprises. And so when I'm telling men how to seduce, I say that you have to kind of create these little moments where the woman is caught off guard. She doesn't know where you're taking them, what the next step is. There can be sometimes slightly negative things where it might be, that wasn't good. And then you immediately catch it up with something good, kind of a roller coaster ride, very calculated.
And is that slightly off guard then? Because you said sometimes a little bad, sometimes good. Is that part of it as well? Because if it was always good, would it not be as effective?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's the classic coquette strategy where you're kind of going hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. Maybe the hot is 70% and the cold is 30%. But when you're cold, they're like, oh my God, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Because the first thing that you do is, what did I do that was wrong that made them kind of withdraw from me? Then the next moment they're smiling, they're taking you somewhere else. Oh, relief. Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, it's okay now. That's how you get involved on that kind of emotional roller coaster, and they kind of hook you that way. Because the whole game, besides getting the other person to think about you when you're not there, is to get them emotional about you. Even if they dislike you, that's okay, because that can be overcome. What you cannot overcome is indifference. So getting them to be upset, which is the whole thing about that wound, getting them to be suspicious, angry, that gives you room to turn around to seduce them because they're emotional. They're getting emotional in your presence. That emotion in your presence can now be turned into something else.
Oh, that's so true. There's actually lyrics in a song that go, I'd rather you hate me than forget me.
Yeah.
And it's a love song about a woman basically saying, I'm over you. And
Yeah.
she's like, he says, I'd rather you actually hate me.
Right.
So I always found that like super fascinating because it still means that you care.
Right.
Whereas the indifference is like you literally don't exist in their lives and they have zero feelings towards you. And then the other thing that you said that really hit me was with the hot and cold. I was with, before I met Tom, I had a very turbulent, toxic relationship with a guy for 4 years. And what I remember is on the good days, I would say, oh my God, thank God you stayed with him. Because then you wouldn't have, this is the moments that you love, Lisa. And then you go through the bad moments and then you get back to the good moment. And in the good moment, you're always like, oh, phew, okay, we're back here again, thank God.
The thing about that is, I don't know this person, so I don't know what this relationship is. You wonder, is it conscious or unconscious? It's both. We don't realize that things can be both. So that people may not be totally aware that they're doing that, but there's a part of them in the back of their minds that know that they are kind of creating this hot and cold game. They're creating a push and pull. So it's never completely natural or unconscious. There's an element where they kind of know that this is a very effective thing to use on the other person.
1,000%. And I think that I'm so glad that you said that because when I look back at that relationship, I realized I was just as manipulative, right? He would verbally abuse me. And so I used my sexuality. I used flirting. I used the seduction, some of the tools that we're talking about in order to make him less angry. But none of it was deliberate. It was all, I had a feeling, I knew that this worked. And so, okay, cool, he's mad with me. Let me use this. So I'm so glad that you said that because I didn't do it deliberately. It got the result I wanted.
Right.
Okay, we're going to move on now to number 13, which is disarm through strategic weakness and vulnerability.
A woman is going to be suspicious of a man because she will think that he's more powerful, he's more male, he's more masculine, he's more aggressive than I am, right? So she's a little bit afraid. Women could be a little bit afraid of men, and rightfully so. So a very nefarious tactic on the male side is to kind of make it feel like the woman is the one in power. The woman is the one who's in control, right? I'm under her claws. She's the one that's operating this. I'm actually kind of weak. I'm actually kind of vulnerable. Well, that makes it, that takes all the trust element and goes, whoa, yeah, I feel fine in this person. To feel like you're the one controlling the man, that he's like weak and he's the more emotional one, that he needs you more than you need him, is going to make all your suspicions, disappear. But it has to happen at the right moment. That's why this is in order. That's why this is number 13. If you did that at number 1 or 2, it's like, oh, this guy's kind of weak.
That's so true.
He's too nice. I'm not interested in him. Yeah. But if he's been kind of leading you along and he seems like he's sort of in control and he's taking you through this theater, and he seems like you have maybe a little bit of fear about him, the whole thing is to reduce that fear. And at that moment, halfway through the seduction as we are, to show that you are the one who's weak and vulnerable, will have a very powerful emotional effect on the other person.
Ooh, that was so strong. And specifically the order thing. That's fascinating because you're so right. I had dated guys before Tom where day one, they're bringing flowers, they're doing poetry. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is when I was with my narcissistic ex, I was like, I just want a guy that's kind. And then I get a guy that's kind and I'm like, well, he's a bit of a pushover.
Yeah, right.
And so understanding it, you've said theater quite a few times in this interview as well, and that really does hit me. Yeah. There feels like there is a theater behind, like a theatrics behind this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a trap for a man in seducing to always try and be so nice. Because sometimes a woman doesn't want somebody who's so nice. Because that kind of signals weakness. And so, our sexes are different. Biology does play a role in things. And women may be afraid of, but they're also intrigued by the male, by the masculine element in a man, right? And if your first signal is poetry and flowers, I'm so sensitive, I do yoga, blah, blah, blah. The nice thing is kind of a trap. Although for some women, it could work if they've been in totally abusive relationships, right? And you sense that. I'm talking about a very cold seducer here. And you sense that, well, being very kind and nice in the first few weeks will really have them eating out of your hand, right? Okay, so not everything is so cut and dry in the seduction world. You have to kind of tailor your strategies and tactics for the woman and her vulnerabilities. So the number one quality for a seducer, male or female, is authenticity, but to appear authentic.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if you are genuinely nice, then that can work. But if you are being nice because, you're insecure, then that won't work.
Oh my God, that's so true. And the authenticity piece is super interesting, but it's very complex because we want you to be authentic, but we still want you to have a backbone. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of pushback for women that don't feel like this. So I want to very much caveat, this is how I feel and how a lot of women I have spoken to have felt. I'm not making a general rule, but this is very true to me and my friends and people around me. As a woman, I want a man that is very kind, that hears me, that nurtures me, that takes care of me when I'm sick. But if someone's robbing my house, I want him to be a hardcore motherfucker. And I want him to stand in front of me and take a bullet. And that is the truth. And so I think that's the problem these days, where it's like we don't just say what is actually true. And so you don't, again, just speaking for myself, I don't want a guy who's just verbally abusive to me, treats me like crap, doesn't care about me, and still still goes after the robber. I'd rather be alone than have that guy. And then somebody who is nice, kind, sweet, and then a robber comes and they look at me and they're like, okay, honey. No, that doesn't jive with me either. So I think that we just need to be honest. And that's what I really do love about you and your work, is that you're able to be that honest about the realities of human behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I try. That's my quest in life.
Oh. All right, we're going to move on now to number 15. Isolate the victim. And I've got a quote, even the strongest can be made vulnerable if you isolate them from their nests and safety nets.
Okay. So this is a manipulative tactic. There's no doubt about it. People have their own kind of context, their family, their friends, their workplace. And sometimes if you can isolate them from that context, they become much more vulnerable to you, right? They don't have any friends, they don't have any support anymore, so they only can rely on you. And it's something that is done over time, right? So if you're confronting with a male seducer who is trying to turn you off from your friends, who is making it so that your best friend, oh, I don't think you should trust her, I think she's up to something, right? He's trying to do things like that. He's trying to alienate you from your family. I think your parents were really awful to you, etc., is a very classic technique, because in your sense of isolation, you're much more vulnerable to getting support from this particular person. And so one of the tactics that that I talk about in the book is taking the person to another country or to another place where they, even on a holiday or a vacation, where they feel unsupported, where they feel a little bit alone and isolated for several weeks, kind of break down that element and make them want to turn to you for trust and support. So if you feel that a man is trying to isolate you in the subtlest ways from your friends, from your family, from the place where you live, and is criticizing that and trying to make you feel like, maybe I don't like these things, maybe that friend isn't really somebody I can trust. This is somebody you should be very, very suspicious of. It's a terrible tactic. It's trying to isolate you socially from the things that support you. And you should be very, very suspicious, and you should not give in to that.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite analogies is, have you ever seen like water that drips on a rock? And if it goes over and over years and years, the rock ends up changing its shape. Yeah. I think of narcissistic tactics as that analogy, because as you were describing it, imagine you have the person that's subtly giving you these negative comments about your family, subtly giving you these negative comments about your friends. Over time, you end up starting to question it. You start to look at something you never would have looked for. Yeah. And before you know it, that slow dripping effect that your toxic partner has had on you has eventually changed the way that you see the world and the way you see people around you.
Right. Right.
I've also had on my show a cult expert, and it was a guy who literally assesses cults and tries to help rescue people from cults. And one of the tactics is they remove you from your family.
Oh, completely. They become your family. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they put you in an environment where everyone believes the same thing. That way, if you go to speak up, everyone looks at you like you're the outlier, like you're the crazy one. And so that isolation where you don't have anyone to turn to kind of like, is this normal? Is this right? Like you don't have those people around you to ask. And so now you end up feeling like it's all on you or like you're going crazy.
And also, as you kind of alluded to, they kind of isolate you mentally, where they make you question your own values and your own ideas. Mm-hmm. So their values and ideas now are the only ones you can rely upon. So one of the isolations is from the things that you in your brain kind of use to support you, that you rely upon, the values that you hold dear. If they can chip away at that, then you're even more isolated, you're even more vulnerable.
How would they chip away at a value? Can you give me an example?
Let's say you're a religious person, right? Mm-hmm. And you believe very strongly and your belief in God is something very important to you. And they start kind of chipping away at that about, that's so irrational. How can you in the 21st century believe that somebody changed water into wine and walked on water? How ridiculous. And they're being more subtle than that. But they're slowly chipping away at a very important value that you have, which is your faith in God, right?
And then just thinking about like if they did it in a mocking tone, like I think that would be even more insulting because it's this like little comment. And then if you say, well, hang on a minute, that was really offensive. Then again, that person can come back and say, oh, you're so sensitive.
Exactly.
And they just keep turning it back. Yeah, it just keeps turning it back on you.
That's one of the strategies about insinuation. You insinuate doubts into the other person.
Mm-hmm. God, that's unfortunately powerful. So we're going to go to number 18 now, which is stir up the transgressive and the taboo. I actually was shocked to see that. So talk to me about why stirring up the taboo actually helps as part of the seduction.
Now, what shocked you about that?
I just thought it would be maybe, like if someone's a little prudish, it may be like a turn off, like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. And people can sometimes almost be offensive more than it is like intriguing.
Well, seduction involves by nature an element of transgressive and taboo. Mm-hmm. So the word itself has this kind of edge to it where we're sort of attracted to it, but we're also a little bit afraid of it. It's like something, it could be very exciting, but there's also something a little bit evil about it, a little bit naughty. And if it didn't have those two elements, it wouldn't be this very powerful word that attracts us so much. So people who pretend that they want everything to be so comfortable and easy and perfect in their life. They want everything to be good, everything to be sweet and angelic. But people are complicated. They desire the opposite of what they say they think they want. right? So underneath every one of our desires is secretly something else, secretly something maybe the opposite that we want, but we're not aware of it. And so if everything in the seduction were so smooth and wonderful and pleasant, he's giving you chocolates and roses and it's wonderful, it doesn't have that edge to it. Mm-hmm. We want an edge to things in life, otherwise we're not interested in it. It gives it something, a little bit, a whiff of danger. It's something we haven't talked about. But seduction has to have an element of danger to it. It has to be like being involved with this person. It's not like my life is at stake, but something potentially bad could happen, or there's an adventure involved that I'm not used to, where I could lose something that I value. And that element of danger is actually a spice in our life. So my view of people today is that we're too tight. We're too like this. We're too political. We're too like holding on to things we want. We're like, I call it the new prudery in the art of seduction. This is the new pruderies, our political correctness, our everything has to be this way. I'm so moral and righteous. This is what's right and that's what's wrong. And secretly, underneath it all, we actually yearn for the opposite because it's not natural for us to be so tight and wound up. The human being wants to loosen up. We want to laugh. We want to do the opposite of what's going on in society. We want things that are unconventional. We want things that are mysterious. We want things that are weird and strange. We don't want our lives to be so tight and controlled like everything is on the media, where you say one wrong thing and 8 million people are after you, right? So an element of political incorrectness, of taboo, of something I'm not supposed to be interested in that person, but I am. How exciting. I think is a very, very important part of a seduction, because people are wound up way too tight these days and they need a release, and they need that release is something that they would never normally do.
You know what hit me as you were talking? Have you read, I don't know if you've read this or you'll be horrified that I'm asking you if you read this.
Uh-oh.
Have you read 50 Shades of Grey?
No, but my wife has, and she talked to me about it. And so I'm kind of up on what it's all about.
When I was reading it was utterly shocking.
But that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Exactly. That was what hit me.
So I do know about the book.
Yeah, that's what hit me, because I was like, when you were saying taboo, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like if something's taboo and someone's a little like edgy, I think people will get their back up. But actually, I take that all back, because you're 1,000% right. Because the book, you would have your, I want to say average woman who's like, maybe they've got yoga and they've got kids. They're still reading 50 Shades of Grey.
But it's not only reading 50 Shades of Grey. The whole romance fiction world is filled with 50 Shades of Grey. Where the male, believe me, because Anna's told me, she's instructed me about this. It's the hero, the male, who's got this kind of secret side to him. He's got a touch of evil to him. But the woman is going to be the one who's going to change him. And that's the whole thing even behind 50 Shades of Grey, where I think in the end she does kind of get him to settle down. That's the fantasy element. The fantasy element is, I meet this guy who's got this kind of secret. In this case, I guess he's into kind of sadism or BDSM. But secretly, the woman is attracted to that dark side of him.
You're 1,000% right. As you're reading it, you get more and more intrigued and enticed by the story, not less. And he gets her to do some crazy shit. It's pretty raunchy. And I'm reading it and I'm like finding this fascinating.
Well, there you go.
But then Tom, my husband, who nothing can shock him, like he very rarely gets shocked by anything. He picks up the book and he's like, what is all the fuss about? Like every woman that I've heard, you're obsessed with it. So he opens it to a random page and he reads one paragraph and he's like, oh my. He's like, even I'm shocked by this. And he's like, and it's hard to shock me. Yeah. But what was fascinating is that every woman loved it. And so do you think that's what it was? That it was the storyline where you had this sweet woman who then ends up somewhat controlling this very good-looking, wealthy, dominant man.
Yeah.
And the sex around it is the taboo that keeps the thread pulling throughout the whole story.
Completely. It's a perfect example. You picked the perfect example of what I was trying to express, what you've been doing throughout this interview.
Oh, it literally just hit me in real time. It didn't even dawn on me about the taboo.
No, that's exactly what I meant.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you should maybe read the book if you want, but...
I don't know. I might be shocked.
No, I'm telling you. When Tom was shocked, he was like, babe, I've seen people at airports reading it. And he's like, if I was a guy reading a porno that was this graphic, he's like, everyone would judge me. He's like, but every woman's carrying it around like a pride of honor. And I was like, it actually is. Yeah. Like, it really was this beautiful moment of us women signaling each other to be like, I can handle the taboo.
Right.
Okay, so number 20, we've got mixed pleasure with pain. And you say mental, emotional, physical seduction.
Well, now we're entering the last stages of the seduction where you've been messing with the person psychologically. They've kind of had a back and forth dynamic with you where they're very excited, they're intrigued, but then they're pulling back because the things you've done that they're not sure about. And it's like a piece of metal that's getting weaker and weaker and weaker by all the bending back and forth, and they're on the verge of breaking. And so injecting a little bit of pain at the end of this, towards this moment in the seduction, like, I'm going to leave you, it's over, I'm done with you. Man, that'll be very, very powerful, because there's been so much pleasure, so much excitement, so much interest involved, that at that moment that you're going to pull back, or that you do something kind of heartless, is going to have a devastating effect on the other person. So I'm being the evil seducer now here, but giving that back and forth dynamic where you're leading them along, where it's very fun, it's pleasurable, exciting, but there are moments of doubt and pain, really is what hooks the other person and gets them completely in your grasp. So if everything is pleasurable, it's not going to have the emotional impact than if you put in, particularly near the end, these little doses of pain.
I really think it's important that you said at the end, because I think you're right, going back to the other ones. Like, if you did at the beginning, you're like, well, this is an asshole, like, I'm not seeing them again, and then you'd never see them again if it's a relationship. But doing it when you feel loved, when maybe you feel like you can trust them, you've been vulnerable with them, and then they do the pain, like that. The back and forth is so true, and it kind of then goes into the other point that you made about the confusion, right? Where it's like making them confused, where it's like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Oh my God, this hurts. This is amazing. This hurts.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, I don't know if this is going to sound too weird, but an orgasm is a kind of mix of that.
Oh, no, you're right.
An orgasm is so pleasurable it almost hurts.
You're right.
In French, they call it le petit mort, the little death. There's almost a sense of, it's too much, it's almost like I'm having a heart attack, but it's so fucking pleasurable, right? And so in the orgasm itself, which is the end goal perhaps in a seduction, this is kind of like a little mini orgasm, where there's both that sense of this is so much fun, but it's also kind of a bit unpleasant, kind of mimics that sensation, if I'm not being too theoretical here.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head, actually. Okay, we're going to move on now to number 21. Give them space to fall. The pursuer is pursued.
If you're pursuing someone so much, right, it's almost like it's getting too predictable here. Mm-hmm. And the sense of being constantly chased and sense of pursued is tiring. It's also a little bit frightening. And it's also like, where is this all ending, right? It's going too much like you're in control of everything. If you take a step back, you're the one pursuing her, and now you step back and you don't call her as much, and you're doing your work and you're not so interested in her, suddenly she's going to have to pursue you because you've got your hooks in her so deeply. And the moment you've created this space, because think of it spatially, you're after her, it's like this, you're after her, and then you pull back. Now there's a space between you two. That space is where she's going to fall. And that's what I mean by it. So you've pulled back, and now she's going to pursue you because she doesn't want to lose it. It's been so interesting and so pleasurable. And she's so used to this dynamic that she's now going to turn around. The moment she pursues you in any way, it's over. You've seduced her. That's it. So it's got to be timed right. We're very near the end of our seduction here, because that literally means to fall, and we're like falling in love. So this is a book about getting people to love you. It's not a book about just having sex. It's all psychological. And literally falling in love is you can't control it, you're falling. So you're giving them space for them to fall, because if you're pursuing them, they're just backing up, but you want them to go like that.
I interviewed a CIA spy, and part of his techniques is to be able to convince someone to trust them and to love, right? To take their secrets. And he says that the thing that you need to do is they need to trust you, because people don't necessarily fall into love. They actually fall into trust. And it's the trust that they perceive as love. And I found that always fascinating.
Wow.
So we got number 23. So that was the last one I went to. Master the art of the bold move.
This is the end of it, the end game, which could be sex, whatever it is that you're after. Okay? But